let's talk about inclusions. I'm Marie Chalmers, I'm a gemmologist, and I'm going to tell you all about inclusions. An inclusion is something that has been trapped inside another mineral as it was forming. This could be all sorts of different materials. So if you look at preonite, you have epidote, which has been trapped inside. You can get rutile trapped inside quartz. You can even get diamonds trapped inside diamonds. That's an exciting find. Sometimes it's not possible to identify the inclusion, but we like all inclusions because they're a little view of what was going on as that gemstone formed inside the earth. Why do we love inclusions? Well, for a gemmologist, they're actually a really important part of our job. So we are looking for identifying features of each of the gemstones. It's a gemmologist's job to identify the material, to tell you if it's real or man-made, and to tell you if it has any treatments. The inclusions are the key to that. How does the inclusion affect the value of the gemstone? Well, that's a question that gets asked quite a lot, and actually it's very dependent on the material itself. So if we take diamond, for example, diamonds are valued for their clarity, and the clarity is how free from inclusions or how many inclusions they actually have. So in that instance, the value is severely affected by the inclusions within the diamond. Lots of the gemstones actually have their value increased by the inclusions, and that's dependent on the gemstone and the type of inclusion it has. If we think about amber, for example, amber is known to the public. It's a very recognized gemstone, but everyone would like to see a bug in their amber, and that will increase the value. So the amber found with the bugs within it will definitely sit at a higher price point than an amber without. In a hydrose will definitely add value to your gemstone, especially visible in hydro. And in hydro is where the gemstone was growing. It created a cavity, liquid has got trapped, and a little bubble is trapped inside. And that is from its growth process. So this bubble can be very, very old, and it's just a little view into history, but it also looks a little bit like a spirit level, and you can move the gemstone and the bubble will move from one end to another. Now that's going to considerably affect the value of that material because that is something that's really rare, very collectible, and therefore impacts its price. I think my favorite ever inclusion was when I found a diamond inside a diamond. So what has happened there is one diamond was growing and then another diamond has grown around that, and it's now become an inclusion in the main body of the diamond. It does happen with other minerals, so sometimes garnet is also found within diamonds, but for a gemmologist, that is just the best day ever to find a diamond inside a diamond. That doesn't actually increase the value of the diamond. I wish it did. If it was sold to a collector, a gemmologist, someone like me who's really excited, it might have a slight increase on the price, but it is actually seen as an inclusion within the diamond, and therefore it lowers the value of the material. Inclusions can actually create the most fabulous optical effects within the gemstones themselves. So if we take a star sapphire, for example, it's fine rutile needles that are creating this absolute phenomenon. So inclusions can add a whole other level to the gemstone. So if I think about peridot, it commonly has an inclusion called a lily pad inclusion, and that is a chromite inclusion which has a fracture around it which makes it look like a lily pad. That is an identifier of peridot. We don't find that inclusion in any other gemstone. So they can be absolutely critical to a gemmologist to know your inclusions, to understand your gemstones. A natural gemstone has very particular inclusions, and some of those inclusions will help us not only identify the material, but actually also the origin of the material. So for example, a three-phase inclusion in an emerald will help us identify that material as coming from Colombia. The origin of the gemstone can affect the value of the gemstone, so that's actually quite important. But also as a gemmologist, who doesn't love a three-phase inclusion? Does an inclusion weaken the gemstone? Well, that would be very much dependent on what the inclusion was and what the material is. Generally speaking, the answer is no. It wouldn't weaken the material to have a small inclusion. Most inclusions need to be seen under magnification, so they're very small within the stones themselves. But if you were to get large fractures within the gemstone or mineral, then that would weaken the structure of the material. So it is dependent on what the material is and what the inclusion is. The inclusions are key to identifying if a gemstone has been treated. So a lot of the gemstones are treated by heat, for example, and sometimes the inclusions will have expanded under heat, and so that will be an identifying feature to tell us that that material has indeed been treated, and therefore that will affect its value. There are a lot of man-made gemstones on the market, and the inclusions in a man-made material are very different to natural inclusions. So a natural inclusion will be anything that was growing around the time that the gemstone itself formed or that it's formed around. So a man-made inclusion will be something that was present as it was manufactured in a factory. So maybe a little bit of metal from the equipment or some particular growth patterns that could be standing out as an identifying feature. If we just take sapphire as an example for a second and look at the formation of the sapphire, we often get colour zoning within sapphires, and that is at an angle of a hexagon. It's a very specific angle that helps us identify it. Now, when they make sapphire in a laboratory, they will also exhibit colour zoning, but that will be a round curved line. So that can absolutely help us identify whether that sapphire is natural or man-made. Should you purchase a gemstone with inclusions within it? That's down to personal preference. Sometimes that inclusion can enhance the gemstone and offer a huge focal point of the material, and sometimes it can really devalue the material and be quite ugly. I think it's down to aesthetics. You either really appreciate the inclusion or you really don't like them within your gemstone. So it's up to you. But if you think about the most valuable gemstones in the marketplace, the pieces that sell for hundreds of thousands to millions of pounds, those tend to be very free from inclusions and the highest purity material. So it's completely up to you. Personally, I love an inclusion. I'd love to have it exhibited as part of the gemstone, but I also can really appreciate an extremely clean and pure gemstone as well. Let me know what you think in the comments. Gemstone inclusions are one of the most fascinating parts of gemmology. It's certainly one of the reasons that I'm a gemmologist. I can't think of anything better to do with my day than get my loupe and my microscope out and have a look at what nature created and what is trapped inside our gemstones for us to see. If you would like to learn more about gemmology, gemstones or minerals, then do give us a follow. Drop in the comments anything that you would like to know about.